James, thank you so much for being here on timforrest.com. I'm excited to talk to you today about category management. This is so important for CPG companies, food producers, anyone that's selling to retailers to understand category management. It's not just, we were just talking a little bit, it's not just a department, where signs in the supermarket or you go to this particular department, but this is a concept, it's an idea of way to manage their businesses by retailers. Thank you very much for being here, James. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tim. Excited to talk. I love talking about category management since I've been at it for so long. So I'm happy to be here and happy to answer questions.
Yeah, and if you don't know James, he's a director with the Category Management Association, and I've been working to get him on here for some period of time. So I'm excited that we're finally getting to talk about it. So, what is category help? So many people, there's so many different opinions. What is category management? Is it just that's just really a buyer's name? But in your view and in our view, what is category management? Can you kind of share with us some insight on what that is for people that are attempting to sell into categories and to be effective thinking about their product as part of a category?
Yeah, so I kind of approach it in a couple different ways. I'll give you those and hopefully it'll help people. So what I have told some people is that what we do is we try to get the right product to the right place at the right time at the right price. And so when you think about that, I have a business background, got my degree in business. And so the 4 P's of marketing is kind of the basic way to think about it. We manage the 4 P's. And so when you kind of broaden that out, if you think about any supermarket chain, a Kroger or a Publix or Walmart, there's somebody that is kind of like the general manager or a business unit manager that is making decisions about what is on the shelf, what products that they're actually carrying, where that product resides on the shelf. And then they also work on the pricing and promotion. And it's not just for one item, but it is truly for a whole category. So if you think of like breakfast cereal, it's the Post and the Kellogg's and the General Mills and all the individual items and sizes, and how they kind of interact with each other in concert so that the shopper that comes in has a great experience, finds what they need, and really is enabled to supply what is required for their household.
Okay, so you've brought up lots of questions to me and to share with people. So I've got 2 questions. I will just do one at a time. Okay, yeah. The first one is you brought up breakfast cereal. I talked earlier about cookies. What is a category? Is a category cookies? Is a category cereal? Is a category milk? How do I define a category? Help us understand what is a category. So does every product have a category? So
every product does reside in a category. That's usually how we approach things. The definition does sometimes depend on who you're working for or working with. So, breakfast cereal that you gave as an example, people probably traditionally think about the boxes of cereal and all the different sizes, but that incorporates your mainstream items, your, let's call it adult, like granola items. It could have kid cereal. Some people would throw that in the cereal. Other people might just say it's in the breakfast aisle. Right. And so what you will find is some category managers will actually handle all of breakfast. So they're working and pulling the strings for all the breakfast items, but individual categories might play different roles within that aisle. Yep. So that breakfast cereal boxes and bags might be one. You might have like breakfast treats or things like that are like the Pop-Tarts that fall into a different category. So that might include your Nutri-Grain bars and things like that. Yep. Oatmeal could be in breakfast cereal. It could be separate, and then you have like pancake mix and syrup. All of those, depending on the retailer, they might roll them all into one. So an example might be in a C-store, in a convenience store, because they have limited SKUs, they might just call it breakfast. But when you
Yes.
go to Walmart, you break it down into smaller segments or categories in order
Yes.
to manage them differently because
Yep.
they kind of act differently. They deliver different value to the shopper, and they play a different role potentially in the store.
You share that depending on who you talk to and who you're working with and who you work for, these categories are different. So I wanted to share. So each retailer sets their own category, and it depends on it's a financial thing. Is how
Yeah,
large is the dollars of that category for them? How many people can be on the category management team internally? Do you have one buyer that manages 18 categories, or is there one category and they're able to do different things? For instance, at Walgreens. Walgreens, we just jump in. They're a category. They're $1 billion category, and other retailers as well. But Walgreens can have in the pharmaceutical side or in over the counter products. There are categories that are $1 billion categories, very tight. Whereas if you go to a 10-store drug chain, it's going to be a
yeah,
very different model.
yeah.
The other piece that I wanted to jump in that I found interesting, particularly because I work with so many innovative brands, disruptors in categories. Is there a player big enough to pay Nielsen or some of these guys to pull numbers for a category to be managed? So if there's no player, if there's no brand that's large enough that's willing to fork over the dollars for the survey, the data to be done, like
Correct.
Pop Tarts, we're talking about Pop Tarts, then that category really doesn't exist as a data element to be studied in general. And so when we saw Red Bull come on, before Red Bull was there was really not an energy drink category. And so how they manage those beverages, I just think it's fascinating how, and you said it, is how who you're talking to, who you work for, and who you're selling to, where you are, how fluid this is. And do you think this adds to some of the confusion for people that really don't have a lot of experience with category or they're selling a product?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things on that. So, one, it can be confusing. I think we talked earlier. If you talk to my wife or my kids, it took a long time for them to understand what I do, and I hope they understand now. But for the general shopper, they're just walking in wanting what they want.
Right.
So they're not understanding that. For somebody who's coming in, and we've talked to a number of people, there is no traditional like background or route to get into category management. People kind of fall into it. So that's why, like with our association, we provide training and certification to help people along the way. But it can be confusing based on all the things that you talk about. The other thing I would add to that is, so categories, and I mentioned it a little bit, they can play different roles. So some categories, and there are only a few in the store, are main drivers for people making decisions on which store they go to.
Uh,
And so, for instance, if you look at Walmart, and I'm making this up, but Walmart might say, we're going to have the cereal category be the best, the biggest, the brightest, and the greatest value for the shopper, so that if they're thinking about cereal and that's their primary driver for shopping, they're going to pick Walmart.
what is it that buyers, retailers, Nielsen, all this analytics, all the data driven companies, all these brands, what is it at the end of the day we're trying to understand and to take action on and make actions on? Is it something to do with the consumer?
It is something to do with the consumer and how we buy, because we don't buy individual items. I mean,
Right.
we do, but when
Yep.
we walk into a store, we're trying to make choices based on my shopping list. So some people in their shopping list will say, I want Rice Krispies, but
Right.
other people will say, you know what, I'm going to shop and see, I might want Rice Krispies, I might want Raisin Bran, I have something for my kids that I need to buy. And if it's not set up in a way that it's easy for me to shop, I get frustrated. And so I'll walk away. So that's from the consumer standpoint. I talked to Dr. Brian Harris, and it used to be that buyers would buy based on manufacturers and vendors. So it was all about, I'm going to manage based on a manufacturer and buy accordingly to their portfolio, but not managing the whole. And then they started saying, you know what? that's really from a profitability standpoint, and from how do I organize it, especially as we have more products and it became more complex, you really needed somebody that could orchestrate over the top of how these items interact with each other and how people shop.
Yes.
And so based on that, that's where he came up with let's organize categories and have a category manager actually kind of manage it over the top like a business unit manager. And you said it. I mean, in some instances, people are running multi-$100 million and billion-dollar categories.
Right.
So, it is a major role within an organization.
Yes.
And in order to really get the most out of those categories from a financial standpoint, it made sense to organize them in such a way. And then the data then could be organized and be used in a way that would be easier for us to control.
At the end of the day, what is it we're measuring? What is it that we're doing all of this work for? What is this? Is the key to all of this is we're attempting to understand human behavior?
I believe so. And that's the statement I made at the beginning, kind of is that thought. So if you go in thinking about the shopper first
Yes.
and what that shopper needs, that's when you win. And that's also when, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So, everybody's trying to sell food, or they're trying to sell home improvement items or things like that. But how they approach it and who their target audiences can be different.
Yes.
And so understanding that shopper, once you do that, that should drive how you approach category management. So if you look at us, we have, like, for the association, we have Shopper Insights Management Association and we have Category Management Association. That shopper insight feeds the category management portion. And if you make the right decisions based on the shopper, you'll win.
When brands approach you that are asking for ideas, what do you share with them to be effective in category management, to be effective in their category? What are some tips you have for them? What do you share with them as far as some ideas for strategies? What's a category management strategy and how do they go about applying that?
If you don't support your brand, you will struggle. And literally, that category manager, at least once a year, is making an assessment on their category as to what they keep and what they get rid of and what they bring in. So support is in many regards money. So it's, how am I helping that category manager position my product in such a way where I can sell more and help them make money? I would have companies come to me and they would give their full marketing plan. So they would say, we're going to drop FSIs in the market. We're going to be doing billboards. We're going to be doing demos. We're going to be doing all this to create awareness. But at the end, it's then, so how do you drive them into the store? How do you captivate them while they're at the shelf? And how do you help them make a decision to buy you? And so if you do all three of those things, that ends up being that velocity. But and I'll go back to some of the emerging brands, and that's where I say it financially, it can be a challenge. So one of the things, if anybody comes to me, the first thing that I tell them is own where you are. So, if you don't own your own market and aren't relevant in your neighborhood, how do you expect to be a national brand?
Yes.
And so and that's your test ground. You can see it, you can monitor it, you can test it, you can really understand the shopper mentality. So I also say, don't stretch yourself so broad. I get a broker and I get all this distribution when you really don't know what your product is going to do first.
One of the not theories, but one of the actions that I've seen happen is that entrepreneurs ignore what we're talking about today, category management. What they don't realize, what they're doing is they're educating their competition on the unmet need that they're satisfying. And what happens in 18 months, they have two big competitors. Legacy brands will come to the market. And if it's a large, exactly. Bingo. Yeah, exactly. You already know. I'm not I'm sharing this for our listeners. So
Yeah.
you know that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so happy. What did you just say? You said store brands. Help me understand that.
So retailers have their own brands too.
Yes.
And there is more profitability potentially for selling a store brand versus a national brand like, you know, Rice Krispies or what have you.
Right. Right.
And so you'll see where they will have the national brand and then a store brand right next to it as a comparison. The reason why they offer those items is, one, they can control the brand. It's their brand. There's no other retailer that carries that brand. Everybody
Yep.
carries Rice Krispies.
Right.
And so they can differentiate. But the other thing is they can offer value.
Yep.
So if you look at that item or that brand, it's probably 10 to 15% cheaper than the national brand. And so they're enticing you, if it has the same taste and experience, that why wouldn't I buy the Jewel brand or the Kroger brand versus a national brand if I'm going to get the same thing and get it at a lower price? There are retailers built on that, like Aldi.
They're educating the retailers on categories that they can bring their own products out and take market share easily because it's unprotected.
Exactly. And they're the ultimate decision maker.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So and we would do this where they'd be like, okay, this category only needs 3 brands, 2 national brands and 1 private label.
Yep.
Or a store brand. And so who would get picked off would be the local brands and the regional brands, because
Yes.
I can consolidate that volume into 1 item versus 4. And
Awesome.
then and it's more profitable for me.
James, for people that are interested in elevating their understanding and the application and the effectiveness of their CPG brand with category management, how would they go about finding you or learning more about category management, the Category Management Association?
Yeah, so a couple things. For my company, our website is catman.global. So CATMAN.global. So that is a way to get some information about category management, understand our association. And there's a newsletter we send out weekly on Wednesdays. So we're talking about different categories, different happenings in the marketplace, just to educate the industry. And then for me specifically, I'm a LinkedIn guy. So just James Jackson, Category Management Association. If you find me there, just shoot me a note. I accept pretty much every LinkedIn connection request. And so would love to talk to you there. Or email is at james.jackson@catman.global. And again, I'm an open book. So any questions that you have or any stories you want to share, I'm really open to hearing it and talk to you further about it.
Thank you so much, Jamie. You helped me to understand deeper, and I think you help our audience as well to understand more about category management and how vital it is to success with retailers. It's mandatory. I don't think it's an option. It's not an option with people with more than one location with chain retailers.
Correct. Agreed. Yeah.
Thank you again. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks, James.